All right, good afternoon or morning or whenever you're watching this, all of my game design students. Continuing the little series here of working on the platformer game. So in the previous video, we added the player sprite, which was this guy right here, and we added a couple of animations, the walk animation, which we can preview, and then the idle animation, which is just him standing there. Now we want to add some behaviors. Okay, so constructs comes with a lot of behaviors. These make your objects work in predefined ways, which often saves loads of time. It's possible to redo everything that behaviors do in the event system, but it's often difficult and time consuming to do that. That's why behaviors are really handy to get your game up and running quickly. So behaviors, which you can edit here on the left side in your properties bar by clicking behaviors, you can add a bunch. They're just all these kind of preset activities that are very common in game design. And so they have them already done and coded here. So you don't have to code it yourself. You can just pick the ones you want. And they're in three categories: attributes, general, and movements. Okay, we'll come back to that in just a little bit. The first one we want to add is called the platform behavior, and the platform behavior can take care of the complexities of platform movement for us. However, there's one important tip for using it. The behavior should be applied to an invisible rectangle object and the player positioned on top. So we're not actually going to add this behavior to our sprite right here. We're actually going to do kind of some little backdoor stuff that makes it work a little bit better. The platform behavior works much better if the object with the behavior doesn't animate, since changing animation frame can leave the object partly sticking into a wall, which can confuse the platform behavior. Also, it avoids silly collision situations like your player hanging off a ledge by their nose or something they're holding. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is make an invisible square for the movement. Double-click the layout to add a new sprite again. So we're going to come in here. Let's look at our layers. Let's make sure we're on the player layer, and we want to double-click, and we're going to add in a new sprite. Okay, and I'm going to add it just right next to my other sprite for right now. We want to resize it in the top toolbar. So up here on mine, it's right here. There's these two arrows that are kind of moving away from each other. So I'm going to click that, and the actual size, I want to set it to the same size as my my player sprite that I already did, and that's 48 pixels by 48 pixels. We're going to keep the aspect ratio, which means it just keeps the width and the height the same, keeps it a square. So I'm going to click OK. And then we want to select the fill tool in the left toolbar. So we've got our fill tool right here, and this will just basically fill in anything here with whatever color we want. And you want to pick a color that's easy to see, that stands out from your background. And one that I think I can do here is just this very bright green. So I can just click right there, and I can click the X. We don't have to mess with any animations. And there it is. You can see this green box is basically the same size as my player character. Let's see. Cool. We picked the green. We did that. All right. Oh, we do need to set the origin point. I forgot about this. So finish up by setting the origin point to the bottom, like for our player sprite. So I do need to actually double click this to open it again. I need to set my origin point to be the bottom. So it's the exact same as my player character. Very important there. And then I can move this guy down. It actually doesn't really matter where I put him, but I like having them side by side. Just makes it look nice. We can close the animations editor. We want to rename it now, so it is pretty straightforward, and we want to call it player box. So we know that this is the player sprite, which I'll rename, and then the green box is the player box. Okay, and then down here on your properties, while you're renaming it, you can come down and see this under properties. Click the box that says initially visible, and that just means when we actually start up the game, like right now, you can see that little box is gone. It's invisible. There's nothing there. Okay. If I were to make it initially visible and I start it up, you'll see the green box will be there. So I actually want the box to be invisible. So I'm hitting that check mark. It's not going to be visible initially, right? I can set it to be visible, but at no point am I going to do that. Just make it invisible. Makes it easy. Awesome. We've renamed it. We made it invisible. Now we want to start to give it some behaviors. The first one we want to do is the platform movement. And this basically programs in our controls, programs in gravity. Okay, it's going to be great. So we're going to, don't select your player sprite, select your player box. All of the behaviors are applied to the player box. So click behaviors, add a new behavior, and click platform. And you can click it once and click add, or if you just double click it, it'll work there. Okay, so this programs in your controls to use the arrow keys to move side to side and to jump up and down. We also want to add solid, I believe, is the next one we want to do. Actually, I want scroll to and it also wants solid. Okay, so we're going to add a new behavior. We're going to start with solid. And what this does is it makes our player box so it can't just run through things. If it runs into any other solid object, it'll hit on it, bounce off of it, all those kind of things. The last behavior you can add, and I would say this one's optional, but the tutorial wants you to do it, is this one right here that's called scroll to. And what this will do is as your player character leaves the screen, it will actually scroll the screen to stay up with your player character. So let's do that. Again, optional, but I do think it's useful, so I would throw it on there. And it just makes it a little nicer. Those are the behaviors we're adding. So now our player box has all of these behaviors, which is great. Let's keep going here. Awesome. This just talks about locking and unlocking layers. We don't really need to worry about that. But actually, sorry, I shouldn't say that. We do need to worry about that. I want to make sure that we added this behavior to our tile map. So we're going to unlock here. So we can now select our tile map. And we did not add any behaviors to our tile map. So we know that our player box is now solid, okay? But nothing else in our game is solid. So if I were to play this, watch what happens. Well, you can't because, okay, yeah, there it is. So you'll notice I'll play the game and it starts to fall through the floor. That's because our player box right now is invisible. So if I'm to click my player box and I make it initially visible, you'll see what happens here. It just falls through the floor. And that's because the box is solid, but the floor is not. So we need to select our tile map, and we need to add the solid behavior to our tile map as well. Once you have that solid behavior added to the tile map, we can go ahead and lock up our platform layer again and watch what happens. Yeah, nothing, right? Now, our box is invisible, and it has actually hit the ground right here. We can't see it. Let me make it visible again. We can watch it happen. So there, our box just hit the ground, and I can actually move around with my box, move it side to side, make it jump. Pretty cool. And my screen will scroll to the box. Okay, which is cool. Now, if you're like, man, that box is moving pretty slow, you have all of these attributes to your platform behaviors over here. So you can change its max speed. You can change how fast it accelerates and decelerates, how much it can jump, how much gravity has effect on it, what's its maximum fall speed. There's all these different things you can change to make it go faster or slower, basically to your preferences. You don't have to change any of those, but you can. Okay. Looking here at the tutorial, that's about as far as we're going to go for this section of adding those behaviors. On the next section, we're going to go into some events, and we're actually going to make our player sprite follow our player box everywhere it goes, okay, to make sure that everything's looking nice. And all that player box stuff just happens in the background and we don't notice it. So once you're done with this, you feel comfortable with it, jump over to the next video and we'll get that going, and we'll see you there. Bye.